Good evening, everyone. My name is Reese, and I'm so excited to be here this evening. I have two very special guests with me this evening to talk about the topic of self-esteem. So let's introduce our guest to our humble abode here, Miss Dethra Giles, who is the founder of Executive Prep LLC, and she is an executive coach and the distraction assassinator. Is that right?
That is correct.
And then over here to my right, we have Mr. Steve Reese, who is a husband as well as father of six. And so we're going to talk about the topic of self-esteem. So when we first had the conversation about self-esteem and what it is and what it is not, I thought, we've got to get together and put our minds together and really share our thoughts on self-esteem. So Webster's definition of self-esteem is confidence in one's own worth or abilities, self-respect. And so it also talks about pride, dignity, and self-regard. With that definition in mind, Dethra, Steve, is there anything that you'd like to add from your perspective about self-esteem? What it is and what it's not?
I think that oftentimes people think of self-esteem, they think of it in terms of how we see how other people view us, and it's really about ourselves, how we lift ourselves up, and not just what we think, but also about what we believe about ourselves and what we can do. So how we esteem ourselves actually displays itself not in just how we think, but also in our actions. There is a tangible result to what we think of ourselves.
I would agree.
And it's very visual. When you think of self-esteem, you can automatically tell that person has self-esteem or that person may have low self-esteem. How they carry themselves, their demeanor, just the aura that they give off as well.
So as someone, and I'll be very transparent here with the audience, so I've struggled with low self-esteem at times. Mm-hmm. And as a result, it's caused me to have interesting relationships. We'll just leave it at that. And also, because of my own self-esteem, it's caused how I interact with individuals at work. Mm-hmm. And there's always this desire or need to prove myself and to make certain that everybody knows and understands what my self-worth is. And so I think I've finally come to the point in my life where I'm comfortable. And so how much of being comfortable is self-esteem? Let's talk about what self-esteem is. And Steve, you alluded to that in terms of how people carry themselves. So elaborate a little bit more on what self-esteem is.
Well,
what low self-esteem is.
What low self-esteem is.
Either or.
I have been around people who have low self-esteem, and it's just something that you can tell that's there, and I think it starts within. Also, they may have not been affirmed enough to believe that they have high self-esteem. And so for here in our household, we try to do that on a regular basis, affirm our children, affirm ourselves. You have to start within. You've got to start with you first before you can start doing anything else for anybody else. I believe I have high self-esteem. Would you agree?
Yes, I would definitely agree.
I am the first one to tell myself, you look good. You're awesome. You do a great job. Because if I'm sitting waiting around for someone to tell me that, I am going to be highly disappointed. And I have to believe within myself first, not only within myself, but what God says about me. And He says that I am wonderfully and fearfully made. And I truly believe that, regardless of the obstacles, regardless of the situation, or regardless of even my background.
And so, Dethra.
I think one thing that you said about being transparent about having low self-esteem at some points, if everyone is honest, we've all had those moments where there was self-doubt, Where you begin to have issues is where you have a running period of self-doubt. So when it becomes, so people will say, if I have low self-esteem, do I need a therapist? First of all, let's back up. The answer is yes. We all need therapists, regardless of the esteem issue. But when it becomes a problem is when there's a pattern and an extended period of low self-esteem. So in all honesty, we've all had it. And also, when we talk about being uncomfortable, I think the people that have healthy levels of self-esteem, that's where it comes in. It's when you're okay being uncomfortable. And that discomfort doesn't make you doubt yourself. It makes you assess the situation and saying, hey, I'm uncomfortable because I don't know this information, or I'm learning, or I'm new here. But that doesn't cause you to have self-doubt. The other thing is, one thing that Steve hit on is, I think this is changing because the gender dynamics are changing, but men have always been very keen at picking up on low self-esteem because
in women
because they're hunters, they're predators, and they go after the weaker prey.